Now, your first alert forecast from meteorologist Kelley Moody.
Check out the scene from inside my car yesterday when that storm broke out over the Palm Springs area. This was just to the east of Gene Autry on the 10 freeway traveling west. Don't worry, I did not take this video. My passenger did, but we were just seeing a couple raindrops, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, boom, downpour. We're continuing to follow breaking news this morning out of Cabazon. One person is dead and 2 others are in the hospital after a late night shooting on the Morongo Indian Reservation. Once a hacker is in, they could also send an email impersonating you, go through all of your photos, send a text message, or with enough work, even get into your bank account.
Talk to us a little bit about more of the inspiration that went into the creative design.
Kelley, how dangerous are those conditions for firefighters and people up there in the mountains?
Well, Jeff, we have been working with an excessive heat warning over the last 3 days. We sent in a volunteer mic'd up and with a hidden camera. Hi. How are you? Barnaby looks like a cartoon character. We're all sort of laughing. He's got a big head.
I never get to go to Disneyland or California Adventure. You get to have all the fun.
That's so not true, Tom. In fact, the last 2 weekends that you were off, you were in Disneyland, and I know it.
Pay attention to this clockwise motion and some of the moisture, the monsoonal moisture, it's starting to pick up. Much of the valley soaked by a steady downpour of rain. This morning, CBS Local 2's Jeremy Chen is doing the one thing none of us want to. He's live outside in the Whitewater area. That's a relatively shallow earthquake, which is why we felt just so much shaking out of it. We're even hearing reports that folks in Orange County were feeling some of this shaking.
Nice Go-Go's reference.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, that was popular when I was in high school.
Was it?
Yeah.
All right, well, don't age yourself, Tom.
Let's go back a few years.
We can actually see this towering happening on our visible satellite. That's sort of that upshoot that you see there. Pizza box here, or what's left of it, and a dirty diaper. Or my personal favorite is the couch I'm sitting on. That's definitely seen some better days.
Now, your first alert forecast from meteorologist Kelley Moody.
Welcome back. Time now is 6:15. We felt the heat. We felt the heat. Yeah, we did. 109 yesterday, 10 degrees above normal. Upper 90s is where we typically are for this time of year. And of course, we are going to continue to hold on to those low triple digits all throughout the rest of this week, but we are getting some relief. The reason being that nice peak of high pressure has continued to move off farther to the east, and in its place, a nice trough of low pressure. That's that big U that you can see there outlined by those lines, which means we are going to fall in a much lighter shade of that orange and yellow, which means that temperatures are going to be a little bit cooler for us. Now, typically when we do see those troughs of low pressure come through, they can be associated with some additional moisture in the atmosphere. And while yes, we have seen our dew points become a bit more elevated in the morning hours, overall we're still working with dry conditions because it's as we look toward the afternoon that we're most concerned with those dew points dropping down into the 40s and the 30s, indicating that we're still working with mostly dry conditions. So we're not working with humidity, and that is a relief, especially because we know that that additional humidity can make things feel awfully oppressive when we're working with those high triple digits. Now, over the next couple of days, we'll continue to hold on to pretty dry conditions for today and tomorrow, also working with some high clouds, but we are going to continue to work with temperatures that are a bit more reasonable, not quite as close to that 110 degree mark like what we saw for yesterday. A breezy evening, sure, for both today and tomorrow as that low pressure comes through. That'll shake things up and cool us down after a warm afternoon. By the time we get to Thursday, though, we will be talking more about temperatures rising once again, and those winds at that point subsiding. But in the meantime, we'll continue to work with our onshore flow. Those winds rearing back to the west as we head into the later morning hours, continuing to expand out up toward the high desert and keeping things primarily to the north of the freeway as we head into the early evening around dinner time, and then continuing to pass on off toward the East Valley as we head into the late evening hours, calming things down a bit more as we head into the morning, but more wind to come. Pretty similar pattern as we head into our Wednesday. Those low triple digits will stay with us through Thursday. Then we'll start to notice that warm up primarily as we head into Friday and Saturday, getting close once again to 110 degrees. We could hit that for areas in the East Valley as we head towards Saturday, and then mellowing out a little bit more for the start of next week. But still, triple digits across the board, 70s for overnight lows. And don't forget for today, you got to cast your vote. 103 again is our daytime high, so that should be the warmest you should be feeling while you're waiting outside to hopefully get that vote in. And of course, we will continue to work with those high clouds, as I mentioned, for both our Tuesday and our Wednesday, and plenty of sunshine as we head through the rest of this week. And again, those overnight lows in the 70s, so that makes those early evening hours a little bit more comfortable. So that's some good relief for us as well at that point.
Nice Go-Go's reference.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, that was popular when I was in high school.
Was it?
Yeah.
All right, well, don't age yourself, Tom.
Let's go back a few years. Thanks, Kelley. Time to check in with Kelley Moody. Kelley, you got your eyes on air quality and the smoke all around us.
I do, Tom. And actually, within the first hour of watching the Cranston fire burn in the area yesterday, we were able to see what we were calling a pyrocumulus cloud get stacked up above our local area. This was visible on our visible satellite, and we're continuing to work with some of that residual smoke. That original pyrocumulus cloud reached up to 50,000 feet in the air. It's since dissipated a bit, broken apart, but you can still see all of that haze over our local mountains, and it's certainly reducing air quality this morning. The South Coast Air Quality Management District has issued a smoke advisory during this time because of unhealthy air quality brought to us by what's called particulate matter 2.5. What essentially that means is that if you fall into one of our sensitive groups, if you're oxygen reliant, if you have allergies, if you're asthmatic, pets, children, those of you who just might overall have an extra sensitivity, you could be experiencing different symptoms of irritation for the eyes, nose, and lungs. So try not to spend too much time outdoors for today. In addition to that, I'll already tell you, I was walking outside a second ago, because we have some extra moisture in the atmosphere that's already cycling in, you're definitely going to notice that scent of the increased hydrogen sulfide in the air from the Salton Sea. So overall, just not a great day to be outside. Meanwhile, we're keeping an eye on a number of different factors that can contribute to the fire up in our local mountains. This morning, we're seeing pretty calm winds for the Idlewild area. However, between the hours of noon and 6, we are expecting those winds to pick up, gusts upwards of 15 to 20 miles per hour in the area. So we'll be watching those conditions. Temperatures in the 80s and 90s on the valley floor, 70s up in our local mountains. Plus, that increase in moisture can be helping conditions for firefighters, but it can also hurt. I'll tell you a little bit more why coming up in my first alert forecast in just a bit.
There's tons of little trails that clearly weren't made by humans up here.
Rick Albert has hiked this section of the Pacific Crest Trail for years. He says he's noticed significant degradation of the paths, and amid the small bloom of California poppies lining the trails, a less charming sight.
Well, the evidence is droppings.
Cow patties.
To have feral cattle on those lands is in direct contrast to, what was intended for these landscapes.
Jack Thompson is the man behind the Wildlands Conservancy. He says he first began raising attention to the cow issue in 2014 after seeing damage done to rare endangered bird habitats, water quality, and potential for disease transmission to bighorn sheep roaming the mountainsides. But with the feral cow population on the rise, all of that is in jeopardy, not to mention the risk hikers now face on the trails.
And out of nowhere, I think I heard it first, and this bull came charging right at me, snorting with, not horns like this, but, good-sized horns still, coming right at me. I had about a second to jump out of the way, and I hit him on the side of the head with my fence post.
Volunteer Don Line was nearly gored by a feral bull in early March while he was doing maintenance on the trails, far out of cell phone reception. The stories we heard of the elusive feral cattle right in our backyard started to sound like Bigfoot sightings. Naturally, we had to see them for ourselves. Jack Thompson led CBS Local 2 Assistant News Director Tim Kelley and myself on a 7-mile trek deep into our local mountains while we scanned the hillsides for the animals. What were you just hearing?
It sounded like a cow.
From which direction?
There. It sounded like a moo.
We sent our drone Skyview 2 through the nooks and crannies of the trails, but the cows continued to evade us. Days later, we received this video taken by one of the rangers of a group of cattle grazing just south of the Whitewater Visitor Center. If you had to put a cost on how much damage has been done?
Oh, I don't even know, honestly. I mean,
Are we talking thousands, millions?
Millions, probably, yeah.
Tens of millions?
Yeah, probably.
Much of that being taxpayer money. The Bureau of Land Management is leading the investigation into the feral cattle.
We've heard a couple of different speculative rumors, and we're trying to do our due diligence to figure out who, if anyone, has an ownership interest at this time.
My theory is they were from the Indian reservations. They, for some reason, didn't work out.
We looked into the rumors surrounding the reservation's involvement. We received this statement from Michael Fisher, spokesman for the Morongo Band of Mission Indians. There is nothing to suggest that this cattle originated from Morongo. Wild cattle have been roaming the San Bernardino Mountains since the late 1800s, when cattle ranches dotted this entire region. The tribe has been in contact with the BLM, the U.S. Forest Service, and others to discuss managing the issue. Douglas Harima from the Bureau of Land Management says there may be between 80 and 120 cattle roaming freely in the area. He says his office is awaiting approval for a funding proposal to proceed with solutions to the issue, some as simple as fencing the area.
The ranchers with whom I've spoken have said that their domestic cattle out on a plain are quite a bit easier to corral than wild animals in the hills.
In the meantime, hikers are warned to steer clear and stay vigilant on the paths for all kinds of environmental dangers, including cows. In Whitewater, Kelley, Moody, CBS Local 2.
It has been almost 2 months now since Chester Bennington, the lead vocalist of the popular alternative rock group Linkin Park, died by suicide.
In an exclusive and first-time interview since his death, Bennington's ex-wife and his son spoke with our CBS Local 2's Kelley Moody. They shared their story and how they're speaking out during National Suicide Prevention Week.
The late Chester Bennington was a rock star in the spotlight, but to Draven, he was just Dad.
What would you say you miss the most about your dad?
His hugs. Definitely.
He gave you hugs?
Yeah.
If you could talk to him now, what would you say to him?
That I love him. I miss him.
Draven's parents met at a music festival. Chester was performing while his future wife Samantha watched from the crowd.
He said to his bandmates, "See that girl right there? I'm going to marry her."
3 years later, Chester began down the road to fame, but trauma from his past would follow him, bleeding into his song lyrics.
He always went public and shared when he could and talked to children and talked to adults about molestation or drug abuse. When he was sober, he did everything he could to help.
After almost 10 years of marriage, they divorced, but their friendship stood strong.
We were friends. I got my best friend back, and we had a wonderful relationship. He told us everything, and I wish I knew that those were signs now.
One of those signs, an antique family piano Chester gifted Draven and Samantha in the months before his death. This, along with a jacket and a few keepsakes, are the only items of his dad's that Draven has. Giving away possessions is one of the signs of someone contemplating suicide. Prior to this, Chester had checked himself into a rehab facility where Samantha says he stayed for around 6 months.
He said, I stayed longer because I wasn't ready to come home. I was having really dark thoughts, suicidal thoughts. But he said it to us in a way that's why he stayed longer, and he was good, and he seemed strong and better.
But Chester was still struggling. Samantha will never forget the phone call in the morning of July 20th from a family friend breaking the news.
I realized that I had to sit my son down and tell my poor child that he just lost his father.
It was like static at first. Like you kind of just don't know what's happening. And then it hits you like a punch in the gut.
Following Chester's death, Samantha and Draven connected with Coachella Valley's local chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. For National Suicide Prevention Week, they agreed to make a series of videos with the foundation to spread their message.
Saying to help yourself, not hurt yourself. It opened up a new world to help people. I mean, in the worst circumstance, but I can really make a difference that connects to me.
The very fact that either of them are willing to get on camera and say, "This happened to us," is breaking down barriers.
The original video has been viewed more than 80,000 times, and different versions have now been uploaded and translated for audiences worldwide.
Don't ever think suicide is an option. There's always a solution, and you have a friend in me and my son. And we travel a lot for work and for personal, and we'll meet you. If it's not next month, if it's not next year, if it takes 5 years, stay alive because we're your friends.
Kelley Moody, CBS Local 2.
How amazing that the family of this man that was iconic to so many is living his legacy now by talking about his death.
She certainly seems committed, doesn't she? If you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, call the 24-hour Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
That number is 1-800-273-TALK. TALK.